Welcome everyone to Tesla Beat number 61. Joe is a real truck owner and you see how excited he is, but it is the second week of a new lineup of the Tesla Beat. So I thought it would be great to reintroduce our new special hosts. We have Brian from FutureAza. How's it going?
Doing so good. What a fun week it's been.
Never a dull moment, and you're always you're a pruner, as they've told me, being able to turn lemons into lemonade, as you got the lemon tree in the back.
Gotta do it, man. Gotta do it.
Exactly. And then we have Hans Nilsson. How's it going, Hans?
It's going pretty well. Yeah, I would echo it. It's been a very interesting week.
Yeah, it's never a dull moment, and whenever I see you, I always feel like I'm about to go into a rave because of this purple background. I associate you with purple. Well, as we said, there is never a dull moment. So again, Hans and FutureAza are tagged both on X and YouTube. Please subscribe and follow them. Just patronize them as they give up their time weekly for the beat. So this week, the stock, as we all know, this past Monday, it was insane. It was like stock was down 10 to 15% for some weird reason. And so I think the stock dipped as low as like $1.70, something like that, 175, but it got pretty low. And so previously last week it was 211, so it's at about 196 now. But again, it has had a huge surge overall. Rather than being down 35-40%, it has recovered a little bit. Let's just get into it. So who is we know FSD 12.5.1 is out. So at least from I've experienced it on several drives. I drive a Cybertruck right now most of the time, so I don't drive 12.5 pretty regularly. But what has been either your experiences or what is the experiences you've been seeing online about 12.5 as the reviews continue to come in?
So I'll start. I got 12.5 while we were in California at the X takeover. Saturday morning was my first experience with it, and it was silky smooth. It was so good. 12.36 was awfully good in a lot of places, still had some real critical issues in others. But 12.5 has been pretty fantastic for me. And then, of course, I've driven, 1,000 miles since then, and it's still not perfect. It's got some new fun issues. When I get to a flashing red light, sometimes it'll do the cha-cha and just kind of inch forward every time it plays red light, green light with it. But for the most part, it is confident. It does things the way I would. It changes lanes when I would. It is not overly aggressive and not so hesitant that it's unusable, like I've seen in some versions before. So all in all, very strong improvement.
Yeah, as a Cybertruck owner, I feel triggered by all of this conversation. I have nothing to add.
Well, you're out here doing truck things. Hans, did you have any comments? Otherwise, I can go.
No, I was just going to say, as a Hardware 3 owner, I am likewise triggered as far as personal experience, although everything that I have seen online has been exceptional. I really enjoy AI drivers' feedback around that. JD as well, if you haven't seen him. And yeah, I'm excited for, hopefully, I mean, we're past now the 10-day mark. Supposedly we should be getting it on Hardware 3 any day now. It's only 2 weeks, right?
Well, that's what I was told about 2 weeks ago for Cybertruck getting FSD. So at this point, only Elon. Well, maybe I don't even know if Elon really knows at this point, because I think he can be overly optimistic. But at least my experience on 12.5, again, it's just these drives. They're just becoming smoother, more confident, or more confidence is just built in every drive. It feels like to the point now where it's just like most of these drives, especially because I don't live in San Francisco, where you're gonna have some interesting edge cases or just a lot happening all at once. But as far as the suburbs go, as far as some decent traffic here and there, 12.5 is amazing. But this definitely feels like, especially when you think of 12.3.6, it really has taken, several big steps forward. So, look out for that. Hopefully, if you have hardware 3 like Hans, or even if you have a Cybertruck, hopefully one day we will be FSD. We'll have FSD on ours, especially because some of us have put on a lot of miles. Tesla Tino, I think he passed 27,000 miles on a Cybertruck in like a month. I'm kind of joking, but he may have more miles at this point than Bearded Tesla. But yeah, it's painful. You really have to, FSD really does change the game. So this was breaking news. So the one thing I have always loved about this podcast is we get the blessing of going Friday mornings, and Tesla always drops the dimes on Thursday night. So I did not know that when we started this time, but that's just how it's worked out. So going into every weekend, we always get the best news. But here, it's insane because the Cybertruck, people specifically in Canada and even Mexico can now configure their foundation series. It's been a pretty long wait for them. My understanding is it's like 100, and if you want the Cyber Beast, again, keep me honest here, I think the number I saw is like 165,000 CAD, which that's a lot. That's a lot. So I know some people who like Gary Mack, some of those guys who will wait. But what are your thoughts as they expand into the rest of North America?
I think it's awesome. I think, I mean, as we see there, not only are you able to get it for Mexico and Canada, right? But you're also looking at a situation where you don't necessarily need a reservation anymore to even get it. So I think we're coming to the tail end of things.
It's exciting. I agree. I'm excited for all the celebrities who wanted one but didn't want to deal with the hassle of a reseller and all that. And then for that matter, 165,000 Canadian is 120,000 US. So it's the exchange rate that's getting them more than the actual cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if they continue to offer the Cybertruck all the way through the end of the year as foundation only. Now that we're through all the reservations, and the question is, what's the demand for foundation Cybertruck at these prices specifically? But with the dual motor also being on option as a foundation series, it's a little bit more accessible than the Cyber Beast. But I think that'll be a good indicator of long-term demand. If we can extend only selling foundations and continue production ramp from now through December, that would be a great omen for future demand.
And I would add to that, I think there's a lot of hesitation because Elon had said that foundation would be ending. And I think there's a lot of people who are just looking at it saying, I just don't want to spend the extra 20 if it's going to come down to $79,990, the original announced price on delivery day. That means it's going to be effectively $27,500 cheaper for the all-wheel drive with the federal tax credit. It's a tough sell.
Yeah, you may have Osborne, the whole situation like that, but needless to say, there's people that are going to buy the foundation series. There's people that will spend that money. I mean, as much as we're in the bubble and we think about it, I meet people every day that still don't even know what it is. So,
and I would add to this that if you think you're going to get it in 3 months for 80,000, you're not. They're going back to the top of the list for that, and that list could be years to get through. So you are still, when you pay for early access, you are still getting early access. And yes, somebody will get in at that price, but there's going to be a whole lot more demand when you drop the price by almost 30%.
Yeah, I think that's one thing to remember. But one thing that was pretty ridiculous, I literally was driving yesterday around like 5:30. I literally saw like 4 Cybertrucks within minutes of each other. So it's, I love to see it because I'm excited for. I'm really hoping. I did see one of them. It looks like it was a landscaper. So I'm really hoping that you do see more of these. Truck owners just changing and adopting into into the Cybertruck, because really at the end of the day, at some point the costs and uh, some of the costs will come out and show really the differences between a Ford F-150 gas truck versus a Cybertruck, and the cost of maintenance and all this other stuff, especially because most people aren't towing, or they're not pulling these insane things. A lot of it is just they just need the beds, the truck bed space. I mean, that's like, I'm making this up, like 95% of truck owners are just using it for that utility of throwing stuff in the back. They're not using it to take these insane loads like that 1% of truck owners, or pull these huge trailers and stuff.
Well, that you also have a situation where if you haven't looked at the price of real trucks, gas trucks, and all that, then you're kidding yourself if you think like the $90,000-$100,000 is a lot for a truck, because it's not. These trucks are expensive.
Well, and I'll reiterate a point that I've made a lot of times. If I owned a service business, if I was an electrician, or, someone who's running around town as a plumber, or, any number of different work, service businesses, I would very likely be willing to pay that $20,000 premium to be one of the first people in my area to have a Cybertruck and get it wrapped and branded, because the marketing that you will get for free driving this thing around as one of the first people in your area will definitely more than pay for the additional, monthly payment, which is something that you can deduct on your taxes anyway. So like, as a business owner, this makes a ton of sense.
Well, and what's crazy about using an EV as a business vehicle is you get to deduct the same amount of mileage as if it was a gas vehicle that actually costs that much in depreciation and fuel to use. So you can actually come out ahead on that. And it's crazy to see the people who don't understand that the utility of electric. I interviewed a man who has a Ford Econo line van, the electric one. It's only got 150 miles of range, but he's an electrician, and he services the Tri-County area, and he's saving $500 a month on fuel. And every night he comes home and plugs it in at the shop, and every morning it's all set to go. So for a lot of use cases, it's going to be just a no-brainer.
Definitely. So the other thing that was interesting, I actually thought this was pure genius on their part, because a lot of people right now are either leasing their EVs, or maybe even having it for a super long time is not something that they would even consider doing. So maybe 3 years or something like that is just kind of more top of mind for them. So I thought it was really cool, like, because this is something I would probably think about. Is this bundle here? It's a 3-year bundle that they just launched. So FSD, as we know, is about 8,000, but now you can buy a 3-year bundle with FSD, free supercharging, and premium connectivity. I mean, that's a deal. That's like, especially if you're on the road, and if you think of what FSD costs per month. That is already, what is it? That's like $3,600 just from FSD, and then the free supercharging and premium connectivity. So, it really depends on, how much driving you're doing. But the reality is, if you're leasing a car, if this is available for lease, but like, this is, I think Tesla is being creative in how they can really make attractive offers to pull people in. But any thoughts on this? Were you surprised to see something like this? Were you expecting it?
Yeah, I don't think anybody was expecting this. But you know what I will say? Kudos to them for even thinking of this. I don't know who thought it up, but that's freaking incredible. But as much as we've heard that it's going to be more expensive in the future to have a self-driving vehicle, I think the opposite will be true. I think you're looking at a situation where these things are expensive initially, but then the more they roll out, the more they become ubiquitous. Then you're looking at that dynamic where FSD will probably be a standard in like 10 years. You know what I mean? And there'll probably be like what we have for FSD now will be like the enhanced autopilot, you know what I mean, or whatever, and then it'll be like level 4 will be like way better after that. And I think these things will be cheaper going forward. And I mean, kudos to them. There's got to be a lot more people joining in, I think, at this price. Well, I mean, the news just came out, so we probably won't hear about this till Q1, but it's pretty awesome.
It's another, again, this is going back to leases. With a lease, you get to deduct your entire payment. I think you might have a choice of deducting your mileage, and then you're not paying for your supercharging. And if you are on a 3-year lease, what good is infinity years of FSD to you on a vehicle you're not going to keep? So yeah, it's clever. It's clearly somebody who has a use case that fits was able to talk to the right person and get it in their head. And it's just nice to see them being nimble, because I fear other manufacturers would take years to even try something like this. And if it doesn't work right, they couldn't tweak it. They would just abandon it. So it's all good news.
I have a couple of extra comments. So when I pulled this one up, it looks like this is only available for S and X currently. So hopefully they do extend this to 3 and Y, especially even if it was just for 3 and Y leases, because I know that is kind of a large segment of customers there. And then I have maybe not expected this specific package, but for a long time I've been saying, and will continue to say, that as the functionality of FSD continues to increase, I believe that Tesla will be offering more and more different options on how to monetize it. And I would kind of agree and disagree with you a little bit, Joe, in that I think the one-time purchase price will continue to increase in price over time. In the long trend, it may go kind of up and down, but like a one-time permanent purchase that gives you access to everything will probably increase, but I don't even know that they'll continue to offer that in the long term either. The other options to get access to this technology will dramatically fall in price as this continues to get better. That there will be, whether it's per mile pricing or just, ordering up your Uber like robotaxi service or any of those types of things will make this so much more accessible to so many more people. And it's just a matter of continuing to drive the development of FSD all the way to the end goal of having it be completely unsupervised. And I'm just excited to see, I think that every one of these new little packages that they're able to tie a little bow on and present to the customer is one more milestone in the overall march to full robotaxis.
We doing it quiet now?
Yeah, John, you're muted. Nope. What John wants to say is how insane this is for job openings in Berlin. I'm pretty sure it's exactly what he was saying. As you can see here, like holy cow, I wonder what you have to say about this, Brian. But semi-truck.
It is. So this is a big deal. There was early talks. I'd seen people I'd talked to in Europe had said that they're working on revising the footprint requirements. The U.S. designed semis are larger than spec in Europe. They don't fit the roads as well, and so there was talk that that it might be quicker to just change the rules than to design a new truck. But whether they get the rule change or not, because we've already got allowances for additional weight, both in the US and Europe, for total gross vehicle weight on commercial semis, having manufacturing localized like that would be a game changer. It would save a lot of atoms from having to be moved. So if they're going to be entering the market in terms of semis in Europe, this would be genuinely huge. And it looks like they're advancing on the semi on both fronts, both in Nevada and in Berlin. So this is the news we've been really waiting for years. And it looks like to me that the real holdback was that they did not have enough batteries. And we heard Elon say on 2 separate occasions, we are not battery constrained. And that was, I believe, an absolutely true statement. But when you're putting 11, 12 cars worth of batteries in every semi, you realize you can't make a whole lot of semis. You make 100,000 of them, you could have made, 1 million cars. This tells me that the battery supply has caught up to a degree that this now makes sense.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, but it's
Okay.
really tough.
No worries. All right. Keep talking about the semi. Let me change some stuff.
Anyone have thoughts on the semi situation?
I guess the only thing that I'll add to that is, there's two options obviously for continued growth of the battery cells for semi. One of them is, hey, now we finally have cathode solved for in-house 4680 production. Hopefully that will ramp quickly and allow for expansion of this product. But then LG has been, pushing forward pretty quickly with their plans to bring online 4680 production as well. And so hopefully they can have localized 4680, which I would probably expect to be from LG Chem in Europe, more than likely. And since there's no IRA tax incentives or anything like that kind of set up in Europe, or at least finalized that I know of yet, then it doesn't really matter who is building it or where the raw materials are sourced or any of those types of things, which kind of removes a little bit of a bottleneck on how that cell production materializes.
Wow. So I figured out the stupid things on the mute button. Either way, I don't know how that turned on. But question to you, Hans, Brian, and Joe: how soon do you think this will ramp in the U.S.? We had a question from Dr. Or not Doctor, but DRK.
So my guess would be a year. My guess would be a minimum of a year.
Yeah.
I started putting together my new square tracker for Reno. I have not finished it yet because I've been very busy this week, but I hope to have that out in the next few days. I'm thinking it's going to be, the ramp will begin in a year.
Yeah, I would echo probably a very similar timeline.
All right, since my mic is working now, so this is pretty crazy to see. China continues to lead the way, and obviously we know that there's a huge push from the government. But EVs likely to cross 50% of total new vehicles in China for July. Here's why. So, but yeah, this is when I saw this stat, I thought it was pretty crazy because I think there's some other ones like, James had put out some stuff about how Tesla sales in China are actually declining, and yet the opposite is actually happening. But I still go back to no other company has ever entered the Chinese market and had as much favor from the US as Tesla. And so seeing them even succeed, I mean, it was just a month ago or so that the Model Y is now accepted by the Chinese government to be bought as a paid vehicle for the Chinese government. I mean, what they're able to do in China is absolutely unlike anything you've ever seen. I think pretty much every company that has gone there has either had to pull out at some point or hasn't been that successful. So, when you guys think of China and some of the stats that are coming out now about how Tesla's doing in the Chinese market, but also even as a whole, like the China market, EVs are likely to pass 50%. What comes to mind? What's going through your mind on this?
So the first thing I'll say on that is the thing is there are companies that have done great business in China and continue to do it, but that joint venture thing was a real killer because think of what a cash cow China is for Tesla, and now imagine that half of that margin would just be eaten by some other company who did what? Introduced some people, did some handshakes. It doesn't make sense. We also have seen the sky is falling claims regarding Germany. If you look, Germany, Tesla is down 41% year to date versus last year. That's, oh my gosh, you guys, it's clear this is, no. Germany got rid of their very generous EV incentives. The days of the carrot are gone. We're back to the stick, and the stick is pretty weak and toothless. So what we're seeing is lower EV rates of sales in Germany because there's no incentives. The car is now $5,000-$6,000 more, and we've also seen the introduction of a much steeper tariff on Model 3s because they're made in China rather than Europe. So it's a confluence of terrible factors in Germany that have led to a decline year over year in sales for Tesla. But it's not just Tesla that's feeling the pain. It's everybody who makes EVs. It just doesn't show up in the numbers for the legacy guys because they are still overwhelmingly producing internal combustion cars that are cheaper to make because, because they've been doing it for 100 years and they know how. So, I think the China situation we've been hearing since forever that this is the last gasp in China, and maybe someday that will be true. That day does not appear to be today, and the people saying it have a real consistent track record of being wrong.
Ooh. Hans, where are you gonna go? Or
I was going to add that, Michael Dunn pointed out he would really like to see that data broken out and how much of that or what the percentage of pure BEVs versus hybrids of some form is in that total number. And so it is a number that is, inflated by the fact that it probably is also driven by a large number of hybrids, but it's great to see. And I think while, to Brian's point, we are seeing a little bit of, we'll just call it volatile. Like anyone who's been an investor in a large growth company of any sort has experienced the volatility that is involved in going from here to here. And as a market, the auto sector is going to be similar. There will be bumps and starts along the way. People will think, oh no, EVs are never going to take over. But if you zoom out and plot the trend and you understand the math of, Wright's law and how EVs are going to continue to get cheaper over time and ICE vehicles are going to continue to get more expensive over time, these things just fade into irrelevancy. And what you can see is that in a country where they have decided to make it a strategic interest to lead on this transition instead of lag, this is where the market as a whole is going to go globally over time. And it's just inevitable. So that's my overall takeaway. But I think to layer into that the fact that there will be a large number of hybrids, probably much larger than any of us would like to see, that are involved in this transitionary period. And that just is a reality that is going to exist as we do make that transition.
I would add to that the economies of scale that have been allowing EVs to get cheaper and cheaper, that cuts both ways. And as your internal combustion sales continue to fall, you begin to lose your economies of scale. And pretty soon you're saying, this car that we sold last year for $25,000, we can't do that this year. We're going to have to raise the price because we're not selling enough. And that can induce a death spiral.
one question I have to the panel is, so actually, and Hans, you just did this, but now even as a Tesla owner, someone comes to you and says, hey, I want to buy like a used Tesla, maybe they can't quite get up to the new price. What are you telling them and where are you telling them to go? Because I think for me, again, Hans, you just went through it, but for me, I still would I recommend someone to go buy a Hertz, one from Hertz? And Joe, actually, your cousin just bought one too. But I think for me, it's just a lot of these dealerships don't have the knowledge or full understanding. So they may tell you a bunch of stuff and it's the exact opposite. And then when you think of, people that are renting the cars, how are they treating it? I mean, let alone are they supercharging it only? I've seen, all of those Hertz guys literally at the airport supercharger, just charging the battery and just juicing it. And again, there's been some claims. Unfortunately, I've had a personal experience where I've only supercharged and it really did hurt the battery. So, so what's been your experience? What are you telling people, especially as, they're looking for used Teslas?
Well, I haven't had a whole lot of people ask me about the experience and my recommendations yet, but I would just say my number one go-to recommendation for anyone is get on the Tesla website and search their used inventory. They've got good deals on there, and especially now, hopefully they will continue to do this. You can even filter by does it have FSD or not, and so you can purchase a vehicle directly from Tesla used with FSD included on it, and those they have some really incredible deals every now and then that come through on that. Um, it was very difficult for me in Texas to find a vehicle that was close enough to me that it didn't end up going over that $25,000 cap on the used EV tax credit that did have full self-driving. I saw a number of them that were out there somewhere in the United States and that could be had for those prices, but never one directly from Tesla that I could have get delivered here to Texas. And part of I was even willing to fly places to pick up a vehicle in order to be eligible for that tax credit, but apparently purchasing directly from Tesla, Texas will not allow them to deliver a car to me in, say, Minnesota, for example, and then register it directly in Texas. And so that kind of washed me out. So if you're not in Texas, you may have a lot more flexibility to be able to find a vehicle that is good on this. So that said, what I ended up doing was just being very patient and watching used inventory on Facebook Marketplace and kind of reaching out to different people consistently over time when I would see something that looked interesting. And what I ended up finding was a couple of young guys who are starting up their own car dealership. They're very young, very new to the game, but they were very, very proactive in their communication, very honest with me, and knowledgeable. And so one of the first things that, caught my attention was that they told me that this Model 3 that they were selling only had 273 miles of range. And I know for a fact that on the 2018 dual motor long range that the EPA rated range is much higher than 273. And so they had gone out of their way to tell me the actual range that they were seeing on the vehicle in real world application instead of the EPA rated range, which meant two things: that A, that's a lower number, so it takes some integrity to be willing to say that. And then B, it also takes some work to know that. And so the fact that they were willing to do both of those things was a good positive sign. And then just through the rest of my interactions with them, I felt like they were very, very above board and honest, which is, kind of surprising to find in a used car dealer. But they're trying to build their business and they are looking to expand and grow, and they're trying to do that by just being the best people to do business with. So huge shout out to them. And if you're trying to find a good deal on a reliable Tesla, I would say use patience and your good judgment in assessing who to do business with if you can't do business directly with Tesla, because anytime you introduce a party that's not Tesla into this deal, the risk of getting taken is much, much higher. So I think those are my overall thoughts. And, obviously there's 100 different factors that go into decide, like, do you want an S? Do you want an X? Do you want a 3? Do you want a Y? You got to make that determination kind of beforehand, or decide if you're flexible. Do you want an older vehicle versus a newer vehicle? Do you want it to be FSD capable? Do you want it to come with FSD? I mean, the thing that I was really looking for was I wanted a car that had FSD included, that was eligible for the used EV tax credit. Those were my two like non-negotiables. And so I waited probably, I don't know, a year of casual searching in order to find the correct deal on that exact thing that was near enough by that I could reasonably go and check out the vehicle and make sure that it, also that's another thing, educate yourself on what you need to do when you inspect a Tesla, and then do that inspection yourself, because none of the inspection services that you can get are really that knowledgeable in EVs. And I wouldn't trust someone who normally is doing a quality inspection on a nice vehicle to do that and do well on an electric vehicle. So yeah, those are my general thoughts.
That was a pretty good breakdown. All right. So this was, obviously I don't know what the North America split is for Model Ys in Canada, but actually I think aren't the Model Ys coming into Canada from China? I'm pretty sure
Yes.
because of Okay. So, but so I'm not sure how much this will impact things, but it sounds like Tesla had to pause Model Y deliveries in Canada amid rebate approval delay for Chinese imports. So the funny thing is, if they had to, they probably could swap up and start delivering ones across the border through US, depending on how that changes things. Obviously, I don't know, but seems like there's always something going on in the world where that could pause deliveries. So that may cause some headwinds. Again, I don't know how many days that they'll be out with this, but just something that is out there.
I'd say that you nailed it exactly. This is a hiccup. They can switch the supply chain. They can get them from Fremont. They can get them from Texas. They can get them from both. But they just got to sort this out and figure out what's going on and if they can resolve it, because the margin is probably still going to be a little higher on the Chinese built models than on the US built ones. But there's a lot of global demand and they are able to shift as needed.
Definitely. Well, as we were talking, as time goes on, more and more people will realize that Tesla are making the cheapest vehicles over like a 5-year lifespan. But to maintain Teslas, Consumer Reports just released, that Teslas are the cheapest to maintain. And you compare this against all of the brands. I mean, again, Tesla continues to just lead the way. I think, what is it? I can't see that. Is it Mazda and then Toyota are next? And again, these are, again, some of the best brands out there, especially when you think of the Toyota Corolla. That is like the benchmark vehicle. And we know that Tesla's put out some stats that over a 5-year period, the Model 3 is cheaper to own than a Toyota Corolla, which is insane. So, I think, again, it's just about general awareness as time goes on to let people know that, getting into a Tesla is actually, it helps you out financially. Especially the difference is you do pay a little bit more upfront. But, again, if you're thinking about this over the, paying for gas and oil change and all that other stuff, you'll end up saving buying a Tesla.
Yeah. My cousin who just recently got a used Tesla, that was the situation. He was always like a BMW guy and all this stuff. And so head gasket after head gasket and engine problem after engine problem, he just like hit me up and he was like, dude, I'm not putting no more money into this.
It almost sounds like you're joking, but when you say head gasket after head gasket, I had 2 head gaskets go out on my Chevy Venture, and it's a van. So, I mean, there's real labor costs to getting into that engine compartment. And it's brutal. I can't go back, man.
It reminds me of my Volkswagen that was my first car. Definitely blew up a head gasket in that as well, and had to change it myself at the time because I was 19, I think. And that was a learning process, and I enjoyed it, but I also decided, hey, I'm never owning another German car again in the rest of my life.
So when you were 19, that was like what, 3-4 years ago, or
a few more years than that.
Hey, that's a compliment. I would say, I mean, for me, like a couple things, because I've owned German cars like Audis. My mom owned a couple BMWs. I also owned, I did have an Audi and a Subaru. And really, to be honest, all of these cars, they get expensive with maintenance, especially the cost on labor. But they all have their own, and you could technically say this about like Honda and Toyota, but just they have less problems. But my Subaru had a lot of problems with various things that, I would have to get fixed. And again, and German cars too. I mean, they actually, especially your Audi and even Porsches, right? those cars are made in such a way where you have to spend an hour and two in labor just removing the parts in order to get to the engine. So when you think of like, Tesla, if you buy, they've been considered a luxury brand for the longest time. And obviously, as we know, their cars are becoming more and more affordable. But what the difference is you pay a little bit more upfront, but you don't have these ongoing, you don't pay $60,000 for a car and then have to go get an oil change 5 months later, which is going to cost you what, $400 on a premium car. But you miss all of that. And even if you're not buying a premium car, it's just one of those things where you don't have all of these insane labor costs. I mean, when you think of like a Range Rover and some of these other cars that are just breaking down all the time and have these insane, consistent maintenance problems, a lot of that you just don't get with your Tesla. And some of the stuff that needs to be fixed is typically going to be covered under warranty anyways. So yeah, there are edge cases, unfortunately. But overall, like, when you talk to Tesla owners, especially even in our club, most of them, there are those edge cases, but for the most part, the cost of maintenance is just, the cost of ownership is cheaper than those luxury cars. And then again, now it's coming down to, it's cheaper than a Toyota Corolla, which is crazy. If I had the need for it, the Model 3 would probably be the next Tesla I would get outside of obviously the Cybertruck, but because the Model 3 is just such an amazing car. And I wouldn't even buy the performance just because, I want that extra range. But yeah, it's just something, to call out is, there was all these cars growing up that I was like, hey, I want a Range Rover, I want, a BMW and all these things, but you forget about the actual cost it is to maintain them on top of paying the premium sticker. So Tesla was the first premium car that we could afford the maintenance on. I'll put it that way. So it's just that's what made it a big difference is I could afford a nice car, but I wasn't getting nickeled and dimed on the maintenance and for people trying to upsell me on random services and stuff like that.
I saw a video a while back of a gentleman who had a Ferrari or Lamborghini. I think it was a Ferrari, and he took it in for a tune-up. And of course, the tune-up is $5,000. And I thought, I wouldn't buy one of those cars at any price.
Crazy.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's just crazy. The one thing I mean, again, not that I'm recommending you buy an ICE car, but for me, like when we bought, I did buy, I think it was 2019. We did buy our last gas car. We're all electric now, but I made sure that we bought the extended warranty, like or all the services. Because what I didn't want to happen was, I don't want to go to I wanted to go take it to the dealership, get all the maintenance done there. But when you buy those extended warranties, or more importantly, like the service, packages, it's all just taken care of there, and you're not going to get this upcharge later down the road. So that was one thing that is different. But yeah, it's just, if you don't do that, who knows what the dealership is gonna do. And the one call out is the dealership model or dealership model is made so that your car breaks down so that you make money. The whole model is built that way. And that's, I remember when we interviewed Elon, that's their whole business model. And Tesla's trying to do the exact opposite. They want to give you a car, you take it, and it lasts for a very long time. They're not trying to nickel and dime you on the service and upsell you and all this other stuff. Versus the dealership, they want your car sitting in the shop as long as possible, so that they can charge you $250 an hour for labor, if not more.
Well, yeah, and a lot of viewers don't realize this, but we've been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty. No, just.
Yeah, I would just add to that it's a business model difference. And because the customer for GM, the customer for Ford, the customer for all of these automotive manufacturers besides Tesla is they are selling to dealerships. Dealerships are their customers. The way that they make more money is making their customers happy, which is how does the dealership make more money? And when you realize the strength that these auto dealership lobbies have, Texas is a great example. Tesla is not legally allowed to sell directly to consumers here in the state of Texas. Why is that? Well, because somebody had enough money just laying around in spare change in the sofa to pay a bunch of politicians here in the free state of Texas to make sure that Tesla cannot do that. And they didn't get that money by, being the most efficient way to make sure that drivers of the vehicles had a low cost vehicle ownership experience. And so, yeah, they just have made a lot of money at the dealerships because they have been able to capture that market and be this third party provider that is a middleman that provides, we'll say, questionable value to its end customers.
That was a great Max Headroom intro, by the way. But I think somebody, it was Sandy Monroe. Sandy Monroe had the stats on some of the richest people in the Michigan area were the dealership owners, car dealership owners, like not even like gas station owners or anybody like that. It was just people who own car dealerships because of all the maintenance and stuff like that. It was pretty crazy.
Joe, I'll pass this one to you. Real Cybertruck owner.
Well, as you can see, selling Teslas is so hard. Nobody's buying them. No, this is pretty cool to see. Like, while people say all these things, this is a Jalopnik article, but I mean, they posted this while knowing that the Model Y is like the best selling vehicle globally. Like what? Like, it just wild that they posted this with a new Tesla right there that's out selling like all kinds of other vehicles right now. But anyway, Jalopnik. You can look at Elon's reply, it's just a laughing emoji. Like, come on. So
typical news. So there's some other things too that have come out. So if you're looking to buy a Model 3, some other stuff that hit. Actually, I've been seeing several Quicksilver Model Ys around. So you can now buy a Model 3 with Quicksilver color. It's an extra $2,000. But I would love to see this with white interior seats on a performance Model 3. That's going to be fire. But yeah, I think they're continuing to just kind of bring out the colors. But yeah, I like I said, this is good that they continue to just mix it up and bring out these various offerings.
This might make Tesla Joy upgrade.
Really? Did she say that?
No.
Okay. So Joy, if you're listening, you know what to do. And then last thing, or not last thing, but the next thing is that it continues to never be cheaper to buy a Model 3. I think because the last ones, I think the 1.99% financing was Model Y, right? So the fact that they announced the Model 3 at 2% is pretty. It's just, again, it's it applies to orders before 8/31, and then you must take delivery before 9/30. So again, the Model 3 is an amazing vehicle. I've driven it several times, but I think what are your guys' thoughts on them expanding this to the Model 3?
I mean, it's a great idea, but we've been seeing a lot of the market being pushed down by the high rates, and this is a way to just kind of goose it from the other side and say, look, okay, you want low rates instead of a discount, we'll give you low rates instead of a discount. And for a lot of buyers, it makes sense. So, I mean, go for it. It's not as expensive as paying all the interest when you pay it up front. You're not going to have to pay as much because there's the expectation that not everyone would have carried that loan to full term anyhow. So yeah, go for it.
The one little piece of commentary that I would add, just for both the addition of the Quicksilver color, but also now adding in these interest rate incentives, is that it seems like the Model 3 Highland ramp is progressing well. The reason that they're doing these additions to the lineup offering with the Model 3 is because we've kind of solved some of those little hiccups that we had trying to get these out in volume to meet full customer demand.
I think one thing I'll say, the overarching look of things here from a broader perspective, the macro is being murdered with not only EV sales but ICE sales as well, right? And Tesla just continues to have all these demand levers. Now they might not be reaching the numbers that they did when it was like peak crazy, when everybody was buying $65,000 Model Ys or whatever, but kudos to them for being able to do this amidst all of this craziness that's going on right now in the macro. Like they just keep having demand levers to pull, and that's, man, that team is incredible.
Yeah, it's been really cool to see them and watch them navigate all of this. Which is also interesting too, which is kind of like, not only are they pulling up these levers, but little things like EV incentives. Matthew DR shared this a little bit ago. But it's just one of those things where incentives are some of the most underutilized things out there, right? I mean, Hans, you use the used car one as well. I think, Joe, I don't know if your cousin used the used EV as well. But check your local, gas and electric companies, and your state incentives, because there's a lot of times, there's a lot of things you can do to really just get into an EV. There's never been a more affordable time. And obviously, as we know, as we continue to navigate through these macro situations, we'll see how those dynamics change. But make sure you take advantage of those things. You don't want, time to fly by and you not take things that are literally kind of in some ways free money. So I think that's probably like the biggest thing. All right. Teslas are safer. Full stop. Joe, I'll pass this one to you.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that happened. Prayers to the family. But so what happened over this past week was the first Cybertruck fire, and a life was lost. But Tesla had put out their safety metrics, and the vehicle fire safety data was very interesting to me, because I ended up looking this up, and I put the links in there. But I mean, the average fires for a ICE vehicle versus an electric is like insane, and the fatalities are even more staggering. Like the loss of life is just so much greater, but you get all these fears, and you can see it even in a Tucker Carlson video, which was an amazing video, by the way. Like, some of the final things they were worried about was they couldn't park their EV in the garage because it would catch fire. Like, it's just a funny way to freaking end the video. Is like hilarious, but it's just so much more fires that are prevalent with an internal combustion engine than there are like for everything else. And this, I mean, the data is just there. People just don't really care about it because headlines and clicks and clickbait and all that. But yeah.
And a lack of understanding of the English language.
Yeah.
Combustion.
I don't know what your shirt says, but it says full flow stage combustion cycle. Literally, yeah, you're driving an internal combustion engine. The engine is meant to throw fire through it. But yeah, it's just I think it's just, there's a lot of FUD out there, and unfortunately the general public still believes it, especially in small town USA, whatever you want to call it. It was really, I loved, I didn't watch the full Tucker Carlson one, but I just loved that they went out to Maine, got literally a farmer, and who used it for real life stuff. Here's a truck for a week, and they put it to use, and then it's like, what's your feedback? And I think that's, like I said, he's able to do everything, and then even having the battery usage on that, so you can plug in your power tools and everything else, just makes it just probably the best thing you can literally have on your farm as far as the utility of it. So yeah, that was interesting. So, I think one of the interesting things was we had Unplugged Performance at the X Takeover, and they had mentioned, actually, I think it was like Greenfield Police, which is in California somewhere. they took delivery of their Model Y police vehicle. But as we know, like, South Pasadena also made the announcement recently that they're the first department in the US or in the world really to have a full fleet of Teslas. And it's all gone through Unplugged Performance or up.fit. And I would assume, because it's like, one of the things when I was watching the video is like you have these ICE cars that are just sitting idle for 11 hours, and the amount of maintenance. And we've seen the stats, at least in the Bay Area. The Fremont Police Department has, I believe, an old Model S and a Model Y, and they posted some of the stats, but it's insane just like the amount of time. Like, not only is it less maintenance for the Tesla, but it's also on the road more frequently because it's not off the road for consistent maintenance. But the cost of ownership is also cheaper over the years that it'll be that you'll utilize a car for your police vehicle. So I'm not surprised when I saw this article about the military going electric. I think it's going to be one step at a time, really. But the reality is there's going to be a lot of things that continue to just push some of these other like police departments and now military just to like obviously choose electric. And I know like Unplugged, they're paving the way for that, so they alluded to some of the stuff that they're working on, especially with the Cybertruck. I could see that replacing like the Hummer and some of these other things.
Well, eventually you're looking at a situation where it becomes like fundamentally wrong to like not save money when you can save money for taxpayers. And I mean, across all cities, like, and governments, we're approaching that very quickly, quicker than a lot of people thought. People were like, oh, 2028, but it looks like it's going to be 2026 for sure. Or, 2030 they were saying, but whatever, it's going to be way sooner than that. And it's fundamentally like a disservice to the community when you could save your city or your county like money and you choose not to. Like, it's a problem.
The thing with the military, a lot of it is you want quiet. Quiet is critical. The M1 Abrams is such a successful tank because as a turbine engine, it is whisper quiet compared to everyone else's diesels. And the other big thing about the military is hurry up and wait. Do you know how much fuel is consumed sitting idle, waiting all day? And that's true also of police cruisers. There's a lot of times when, especially doing event control at fairs, at public events, where they'll have to park a cruiser and leave it running all day. It's disgusting. It's expensive. It's a huge waste, and it wears it out. Just park it with a battery, baby. Let it roll. It's great.
And, in the case of military or police applications, one of the cool things from the, very sensational Whistling Diesel Cybertruck review was I love the part where they put C4 on the door and the tailgate and tried to blow the dang thing up. And, the Ford had giant holes blasted through it, which would have been very damaging to anyone inside the vehicle. Whereas the Cybertruck, it's just, a little bit of a dent. I think you could probably buff that out. And, there are definitely applications where that is actually not just a nice to have, fun, interesting feature, but very, very critically important.
Yeah, there was a lot of fun in that video that was just overshadowed by that whole trailer hitch thing. It's like that the Ford couldn't even get off of the truck the way they were unloading them. They just dumped them. It had broken the axle just doing that. So just like that video is hilarious.
Yeah, just a little bit on that. So I think Joe is talking about, or you probably have seen, most of the people have seen it, is the Whistling Diesel. That one was insane because one, it could literally not even get over literally all of the actual, like, what is it? Those round circle beams, the culvert.
Yeah.
And, so it couldn't even get over that. And then also too, they didn't even show them beating the truck because literally I think it had broken pretty much because from the C4, and then even just, them pounding the door. So here they are just beating the heck out of the Cybertruck. They don't even show that. So, and then again, as we all know, like, how did the actual like chassis break or whatever in the back? It's because it literally hit that edge at the in the earlier footage. And so yeah, it's just, unfortunately, people are going to believe that this thing can't tow, and yet, people will see it. So, but yeah, just another week in the world of Tesla, as it comes to an end on the Tesla Beat 61. So again, please give these three amazing hosts a follow. They're tagged on both YouTube and X. Patronize them, follow them, subscribe, and we will see you all next week. Thank you again for giving us your time this week. And as we all know, there's never a dull moment, or there's always a beat in the Tesla world. See you guys.